Welcome to the Dental Billing Academy podcast, powered by eAssist Dental Solutions. Hey, dental billers. We have another awesome episode of the Dental Billing Academy ready and waiting for you. I am super excited. We had a lot of buzz because I kind of gave a sneak peek of this episode to everyone on social media, and we had a lot of excitement around it because what we're going to talk about today is conflict resolution within teams. So you may be a dental biller or front desk administrator that works solo by yourself up at the front desk. Oftentimes, what we see is there are usually multiple people at the front desk or dealing with all of the front desk processes because there's just so many, right? So you maybe have somebody that's dedicated to treatment planning, somebody that's dedicated to insurance, somebody that does a lot of the scheduling and answering the phone. But even if you're somebody that's up there by yourself, you still have the hygienist and the doctor and the assistant. You're still part of a team. And we all know that working closely together with team members, 8 hours a day, sometimes more than you see them more than you see your own family, it causes conflict to come around every now and then, maybe more so for some teams than others. So I have the amazing Suzie Henry here with me today to talk about conflict resolution. And we're going to dive into some things. Suzie has some amazing learning objectives for this podcast, some tools you can actually take away and implement and use in your practice. If you are thinking to yourself right now, like, well, our practice is one that has conflict come up more than we probably should. Then this podcast is for you. You definitely want to have these tools in your toolbox. So, hi, Suzie.
Hello, how are you, Amanda?
Good. Thank you so much for joining. So we'll start off all about you, and I would love for you to just tell me about your career in the dental field.
Sure. So I feel like I have a story like a lot of people. I started working in a dental office while I was in college, just to kind of pay the bills. My sister was working for an office and they offered me a job as a dental assistant. So honestly, once I dipped my feet into the dental field, it sucked me in. I think like a lot of all of us, and I grew to love the dental field. I was at my first office for 11 years and I was cross-trained front and back. I had an amazing office manager who was like a second mom to me. And, I think one of what we're going to talk about is, I built a really great relationship with her that was more of a family relationship. And then, I changed a different office after being there 11 years. It was hard to leave. It was like leaving my family. And I started working for an oral surgeon. And then my path kind of went down the specialty world. And then after I got married and had babies, I wanted to find something that I could be a little more flexible with. So I found eAssist, and here I am 20 years later. So I love the dental field. It's my passion. So
Same. I just can't imagine doing anything else.
no, I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll be a nurse, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then just everything I thought about, just everything brought me back to the dental field.
I
So,
know.
and
I
I
am
think
the
we're all
exact.
like that, right? It
Yeah,
just didn't. We all have this passion for it. So,
absolutely. So let's dive right into what we want to talk about today because I think that there's
sure.
a lot that we can cover and talk about. So let's start off with what are the most common reasons that you feel are the reasons for conflict within a dental office?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've been around the block in the dental field, so I've seen many disagreements and fights, and I think it can boil down to anything like, hey, you filed this claim wrong, you need to do it right. You didn't scrub this instrument correctly. It can cycle, and it can just like you start with one thing that can just blow up into something that probably didn't really need to be blown up, and um, we're all, well, I mean, there are plenty of men and we love the men in our dental field, but there's a lot of women and we tend to think on emotion and we act on emotion first before we think out what we're going to say. And I know I have learned from my mistakes, and I'm every day I'm trying to be better and better at this, because you see something and you just want to say something right away, but you have to kind of take it back and think about what you're saying. And so, I think a lot of times it's you maybe you just have a weird personality relationship with the new office girl, and you're like, oh, I don't know if we can get along. So um, I think personality conflicts is a really big one. I think when people you feel are not pulling their weight in the dental office like you want them to, um, when someone keeps calling in sick all the time, and you're just like, why doesn't she just come to work? So I think there's so many situations, and I'm sure, as people are hearing this, they can think of 4 or 5 situations that they've been in where there's been conflict in the office, or more. So,
Well, and like we just talked about, if everyone listening to this podcast has the passion for dentistry that we were just talking about, with high levels of passion come these high emotions, like you were saying.
absolutely.
So
Mhm.
if you are a dental biller that is just working every single day to increase cash flow and make sure those insurance claims are paid and schedule to goal and give patients 5-star treatment, you're constantly working towards the good of the practice. Then, like you just mentioned several ways where um, conflict can happen with employees when the perception then seems like, oh well, they just don't care as much as I do, right? And
Right.
your passion for dentistry is just so strong that sometimes that can cause conflict when there shouldn't be any.
Absolutely. I just had one pop in my head that I've heard so many times throughout the dental world, which is, that's not my job. Like, hey, I'm not gonna go empty the garbage. I'm a front office staff. That's not my job. So like there are there's just so many. I'm sure as we talk, I'll be thinking of all these scenarios that happen, but yeah, definitely.
That's a huge one. I'm glad
Mhm.
you thought about that. I actually die a little bit inside every time I hear that.
Oh, I know. I cringe a little. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, so that's a huge one. So with all of this plethora of ways conflict can happen in an office, it definitely seems like a no-brainer that conflict resolution is important. But why specifically do you feel like conflict resolution in a dental office is really important?
yeah, I mean, a couple of them. One, I feel like if there's a lot of chaos and drama in the office, the first people that feel it are the patients. And patients are the most important part of your dental practice. They're the heart of, if we didn't have patients, we wouldn't have a dental practice. Um, and let's just say somebody just got into an argument, and I go up there and I'm super upset about it, and I'm at the front desk and I just have this angry, frustrated look on my face because I can't hide my emotions, and I'm supposed to be greeting these patients and welcoming them. They're going to sense that vibe. They're going to sense that there's something going on in the office. Um, Also, like you said, we are around our coworkers usually more than our family. It's not just, the way I look at it is, it's not just a job. This is your work family. Like, we need to come together, find a solution, because I don't want to be miserable at work. I hope most people don't want to be miserable at work, but if you're in an environment that's toxic and that you're just feeling angry all the time, then that's going to affect your home life. It's going to affect the way you are with your own family, your kids, So I think, you know, it's just so important to find that peace, and it's not always easy, and sometimes you have to work at it every day. But um, I think that the success of the dental practice really lies on the, you know, making sure that your team is a unit and not just Sally here, Amanda here, Susie here. We need to come together as a one unit.
Yeah, and like you said, we all want the practice to be successful. We want to have successful careers in dentistry, but also we want to enjoy our job. and
Yeah.
enjoy going to work and come home and, like you said, not carry that burden and that anger and resentment home with us and kick our cat. So
Yep.
if anybody has not heard Zig Ziglar's "Don't Kick Your Cat," you should go read it because you don't want
I'm
to go
gonna have to
home.
read that. I haven't
Yeah,
heard of
yeah.
that.
So you don't want to go home and kick your cat, and that is an exact example that you just gave, where you have constant conflict
Mhm.
with your team. But then also, let's not forget conflict with patients.
Yeah.
And then you bring that home. And then your home life, you should be able to come home and relax and have that great work life balance.
Yep. And when
Um,
you got a bad day, you're gonna bring that home with you most usually you can't just leave it at the door because your emotions are, flared up in there. So you just have to like find common ground so you can be happy at work. So
yeah. Well, I'd love to know some of the situations that you've been in that have been difficult and how you handled them. So let's get some examples from you
sure.
on some of the conflict resolution.
Yeah. So, I like I said, I started a dental office when I was 19, barely 19 years old. So, I didn't have tons of life experience and I was your typical teenager. I gossiped. I was just a catty girl, and it really came back to bite me. And one of the girls overheard me talking about her, and it was one of the worst feelings I've ever felt. And the way that she came up to me and approached me about it was so graceful. And I learned so much from her on how I mean, she could have come at me and been horrible to me because I was horrible to her, like, hey, you did this to me, so I'm going to do this to you. And I really, really, really learned from that experience. And I think about that a lot because, there's certain things that you think about, man, I wish I could go back in time and change that. Um, she came to me with not an accusatory attitude, and she just basically said, "Hey, I heard you talking about me, saying that I was skip because I was working as a dental assistant at the time, and I felt like she was taking her time to clean the operatory so that I would get the hard patients. And she just basically said, like, that is so not my intent. I would never do that on purpose. And once I really understood where she was coming from, I'm an emotional person and I just started crying and I deeply apologized for what I had said about her. And like I said, that's always kind of been in the back of my mind because I never want anyone to ever hear me talk bad about them. And, now I really think about my words before I talk to anyone about anyone else because um, I know how much words hurt. Words can last such a long time with people in general. And so, that was one experience I felt kind of pushed a button for me and changed a little bit. Um, and I feel like I learned a lot from that and became more of a compassionate person because of that. I have
Yeah.
many other other experiences, but that was kind of like my aha, whoa, Susie, you need to be better at this. So
Yeah. Well, and like you said, words can last with people for a very long time, whether they're good or bad. So bad ones, obviously, is what we're talking about. But then in this specific case with you,
yeah,
the good communication has stuck with you this whole time, just as
yeah,
long as if you had heard her say something negative about you, or if she had come at you very accusatory, it's lasting just as long, and it influenced you for the good. So what I would love for every dental biller to take away from this podcast is just knowing that while it's hard in the moment
mhm,
to maybe show grace and be the bigger person and work to communicate better with your team members because you do work so closely together, you want to take that influence from people that you know to be great communicators and can have those tough conversations very gracefully, and then be that for somebody else, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
Maybe somebody on your team has an experience with you just like you had with that person in your story, that lasts with them for years and years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then, I was thinking of another story, another situation where I had a patient that was extremely upset about his insurance. Um, we had thought we got all the benefits, but we didn't, and the patient had a waiting period. It was a really weird plan, and they had a waiting period on major work, and something that we thought was basic was under the major, and so that was our completely our fault. And this patient called me and was furious that they got their EOB back from their insurance and they'd read it and they were like, "Oh my gosh." And I mean, we're talking they were like saying choice words at me over the phone and I could feel myself just like getting red, because like hearing these toxic words come into my ear, I was just like, "Ooh." Like I answered the phone, it was just an immediate, how could you do this to me? I can't afford to do this. I got to put food on the table for my family. And I mean, just didn't
Right.
get the chance to really talk. And
And fight or flight kicks in at that point, right? You
yeah,
either want to come
exactly.
back at them very combative, or you want to just slink back
Yeah.
and not say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this was after years of practice of, being with patients and working with the public. And I was able to calm him down and really talk it through with him. We were able to make it, it was our fault. We didn't, although he should know his benefits, right? So, we came to an agreement and everyone walked away very happy and he deeply apologized for how he treated me. So I think a lot of times it's your tone and how you talk back to if someone's coming at you and they're upset, what is your tone? Are you gonna sound snippy back to them, or are you going to be calm and have a nice voice that they're gonna want to talk it through with? Because if I was, how dare you talk to me this way, then we weren't going to get anywhere, right? And so I feel like it's sometimes it's not like what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it. How are you saying it in, are you saying it in a nice calm voice, or are you saying it in a defensive voice? Because being defensive never gets you anywhere, right? We always end up just going in circles, back and forth, and there's never any resolution. So
Right. Well, and with patients, um, what's always helped me with communicating with patients is when they call, like in that instance, when they call upset, there's a good chance that they had to speak that way to get to be heard at a
yeah.
past dental office. And so they immediately jump to that. And then if you, like you said, talk it out with them and you're very reasonable and really work to find a win-win situation. A lot of times I've had this happen to me too. They apologize
Hmm.
for how they behaved. And then you don't become another statistic in their mental log of, offices that I have to yell and scream and throw a fit in order to be heard.
Right.
It's very comforting and empowering for a person to know that they can just have a regular conversation and be heard, and that
Absolutely.
that creates loyal patients for life if they know that they can call you up and actually just have a conversation with you and you listen to them and they don't ever have to call and yell and scream and use choice words.
Right.
That's a game changer.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm not saying that you should always take that abuse because we all know that sometimes there are patients that are gonna be completely
That's true.
irrational and unreasonable. And you do have to kind of take it case by case, like we don't ever want anyone to feel like they're being attacked and abused, over the phone, like, oh my gosh. So you just need to just kind of see if you can alter the situation. If you can't, try and calm them down. If you can't calm them down, then you take the next steps of, like, hey, let's pause. Please call me when, we can actually have a productive conversation. And I would love to help address this concern with you. But nobody should have to take that all the time. That's not like how I hope I didn't come across that way, because
No, no.
I tend
Um,
to be one of those that's just way too nice. But yeah, so we don't have to take that all the time, but it's just what you say and how you say it.
exactly, exactly. Well, I love what you just said just then with that little phrase that you can use with an irate patient. Um, I've used that before when talking to someone of just, I, I'm, I don't feel like this conversation is 100% productive right
Yeah,
now. So I think we should both come to the table at a later time and see if we can
yeah.
try this again. Um, what are some other like keywords or phrases or just concepts that dental fillers should know that can help them in some of these tense situations, either with team members or with patients, that gets them to this conflict resolution a lot faster, or even um, prevents conflict from happening to begin with?
Yeah, yeah, a few come to mind. One is from the 7 habits is seek first to understand and then be understood. So if someone's coming at you and they're upset, you want to understand why they're upset, first of all. You want to like take a minute, try and understand where they're coming from, and then usually you can then be understood if you take that time to just really like listen to them. um I think that's a huge one, don't you think? Yes. um
I do love that. The 7 habits of highly effective people. If anyone out there has not read it,
yeah.
I would definitely encourage you to go read that. But yes, seeking first to understand is a big one that we even teach our children in my
Yes.
house, because it is something that I think that a lot of people um, forget, and don't always look to understand where someone's coming from. They just assume.
Right. A lot of times we have these emotions and we're only thinking about ourselves in that situation and how we feel and how they made me feel. And sometimes you have to think about, okay, well, how does that person feel about
Right.
this?
And
Like,
that's not uncommon at all. Everybody does that. You know your emotions and you know what's in your head, but it's really training how you think, right? Making yourself stop and think about it from another person's point of view, or asking
yeah,
them to explain it to you. And it takes a little bit of time,
yeah. It takes
to
a
get.
lot of practice. I'm still learning that today,
Yeah.
like after years in the dental field, I'm still learning that. And like putting yourself in their shoes, like,
Hmm.
okay, well, and not be so close-minded so that you're not open to feedback and to you know learning, because I think that's so important in growth in life in general. um it's how you approach it. Like, are you going to come at them frustrated and negative and say mean things right away because you're super upset? How are you going to approach it? Like if I get an email from an upset doctor or, colleague or whatever, patient, what I like to do is I like to write my email out separate into like I usually open a Google Doc and I write my email out and then I triple check it. Sometimes I even have a friend help me like, hey, I want this to come across this way, but I don't want to sound rude or mean, or I don't want to accuse someone of anything. Can you make sure my words sound okay? So I always like before I just and sometimes I let it go. I let it go for a day or so. Let that person cool down a little bit too, before I come at them right away, because sometimes they just need time too. So whether it's a text message you get from a coworker or an email from a patient or whatever, I really like to kind of like triple check what I'm saying back so that we again don't start this vicious cycle of a circle where we're not getting anywhere. We want to come to a resolution, not just keep it going on and on and on forever. And
Right. And those types of communications, the other person on the other end can't see your face, they can't hear your
exactly.
voice. So that is where it gets really tricky. Um,
Yeah.
Make sure that you are expressing yourself the way that you want to be
Yeah.
expressing yourself.
And
So
we live
yeah.
in a digital world right now, like people tend to not be face to face a lot with like, even when you feel frustrated with like a coworker, a lot of times you'll get a text and not like someone actually talking to you, and so um just really thinking about your words and what you're saying and how you're approaching it. Even if you're the person that's frustrated, it's okay to talk to that person. You should talk to that person if you're frustrated and it's affecting you, but think about how you're seeing it. There's things you could say like let's say you're trying to understand where someone's coming from and you're like, why aren't you doing your job? Why can't you just do your job? You just sometimes you want to say that, like, why can't you just do your job? But instead, you could say things like, hey, I'm trying to understand why there's dirty instruments there. Can you give me a little bit more clarity on that? Or, hey, I'm trying to understand why these patients' benefits haven't been checked on yet. Can you give me a little bit clarity on why that hasn't been done yet? And then that gives them an opportunity to answer without feeling threatened, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, that's really great, in my opinion, phrase to use, and seeking to understand the why behind somebody's um, actions.
Yeah,
Like I said, with all the passion, and it can feel like somebody just doesn't care, or somebody's just making these mistakes, or like in the example that you said where you felt, and that's valid. That's how you felt at the time, even if you didn't go about it maybe the right way, but you felt as though a coworker was doing something intentionally to make your life harder. And I think that a lot of people in dental practices that are on a team feel that way,
yeah.
even though that's not probably not the case.
ab-
So looking to find the why, because how you will approach it at that point, if they did make a mistake or did something that you didn't agree with, but they did it with good intentions,
yeah,
would be different than if they did it maliciously, right?
absolutely. And sometimes it's a great teaching opportunity. Maybe, they don't quite know how to do that. Or maybe they're feeling frustrated with themselves and they know they can't do it. And so you're giving them an opportunity. You're opening the door for them to communicate that to you. You know, I always tell my teams as a team leader, I tell them, I am like an oversharer, an over communicator. Like, come to me. Like, if you are struggling with anything, please just come to me and let's work on it together. I don't want you to feel like there's this wildfire that's brewing and then, we could have resolved this a long time ago. So, I, anyone that knows me knows I communicate way too much. Like they're like, okay, Susie, enough, but I just think that open communication is the key to everything in life, whether it's work, your family, your, relationships with anyone. So I love communication. So
Me too. I am in the same boat where I maybe communicate too much, but um,
but that's
that's
okay. You
just
know
who
what?
we are, you know.
Everyone knows that about me and they're okay with it. So I think
Exactly.
they're okay with it. But if you're not, come at me and let's talk about it. I'm just kidding.
Oh, so I appreciate you diving into this with me, because I truly feel, um, well, I know, and I know that you know, because you've heard it so many times, that people on dental teams saying, that they have conflict, or like you had said at the beginning of the podcast, when there's quite a few women in the office, just like, oh, working with women is so hard. And
Yeah.
it's really not. And it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, you can really leave out that drama. I feel like most of the time when people have conflict, it's because they're not communicating well enough, right? Whether um, one person feels this way, the other person feels this way, and they don't talk about it, and it just brews, and it just, it can go on for months, sometimes weeks, years, and you never really like come together and talk about it. And if you're going to be around that person all the time, like, so if you feel that tension and you know that something is going on, say, hey, you know what? I would love to get a cup of coffee with you. Let's go and chat. Let's let's talk. And there's been so many great friendships that I've had that have come out of that, and conversations, tears, because we're all women, right? And well, I don't know. I'm a crier, but I know there's a lot of women that aren't, but I cry when I'm happy, sad, mad, frustrated, so usually I'm the one crying and like just, and I think sometimes people need to see that emotion to know that you care for them. They're not just a coworker, they're family. And, like you have to care. Like we care for each other, And so I think that just understanding where they're coming from, becoming a friend, and then having open communication. I think those are just like the keys to having resolution with conflict in an office, because if you're not communicating, no one's going to know. Like maybe I'm doing something every day that's upsetting somebody, and I have no idea that I'm even doing that. But then that person's holding on to this grudge, and they're frustrated and they're mad and they're annoyed at me and they roll their eyes at me, and I have no idea I'm even doing anything wrong. So like you just need to like communicate that. So
Right. Well, and I love the point that you're making about becoming friends, but even if you can't become friends with
yeah.
somebody that you work with because there's just too many differences, maybe you're new to a team and the other person up front with you, there's a significant age difference.
Yeah.
Or um, you have very
Different
different
views in life, right?
views on life, or maybe you have kids or you don't have kids and your coworkers do or don't, and so it's just hard to kind of find that common ground, but find something,
Yeah.
even even one thing
Yep.
that you can relate to on a personal level. um, the love of being on a beach, right? Everybody loves beach. Or
Yeah. Who doesn't?
reading or writing or a specific podcast like the Dental Billing Academy
That's
podcast.
right.
Anything that you can find that you have in common will help. So you don't have to be best friends. You don't have to go out on the weekends or chat every day, but just knowing them on a little bit more of a personal level, it will, like Susie said, help you to communicate and um, make talking about things a little bit easier, because then you can come at them from a personal angle, but then also a friend of like, hey, let's sit down and talk, because they know that you do care about them,
Yeah.
and it's not
Absolutely.
just it's not just business.
Yep. I mean, and sometimes people are just complete opposites, oil and water, and you're put in this work situation and you've got to work. You've got to find a way to work together. Otherwise you're going to be miserable. So I really like what you said. Everybody has one thing that they can maybe, have a common thing, right? Whether it's, hey, I like Snickers, so do you. And then you could leave little Snickers for them every once in a while. But like
Yeah.
there's always one thing you can do. And I think um we all wake up and want to have a great day. We all want to say, hey, today's going to be an awesome day. You don't wake up and go, I just want today to be awful. I don't want to get along with anyone. So I think, if you wake up feeling hopeful and, um, if you have that person that you need to communicate something with, get it off your chest, talk to them in a kind way, think about what you're saying, how you're saying it, how you're approaching it, and it will usually go a lot better than you expect. So
Exactly. I have a friend that I'm going to steal something that he says all the time, but it's okay because I don't think he ever listens to this podcast. But he and I love this saying. He says nothing happens in a vacuum. So um that's something else to keep in mind. If you have a coworker that shows up just immediately slamming the door and kicking things and slamming instruments, instead of running with that and everybody ends up having a bad day, she or he walked in like that, something happened, so coming to them as a friend saying, hey, is everything okay, or hey, do you need to talk, um just like you would want somebody to do for you. That And this goes for the doctor, hygienist, team members, everyone, um that like Susie said, nobody wakes up and it's just like, I want this day to be awful. But you also don't know everybody else's set of circumstances on their way to the office that day, or,
Right.
um, what happened the evening before, or how well they slept, and, things like that. So just reaching out and caring and seeking to understand. And then maybe you can help improve somebody's day and avoid conflict happening that day.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
for,
some people are really private about their personal life when they come to work and they don't want to talk about why they're upset. But just if you say, hey, I hope you're having a great day. Like, if you need anything, I'm here for you. And I think
yeah.
that that can go a really long way instead of going, wow, Amanda's really ticked off today. I'm just going to avoid her. I think letting people know you actually care. They don't have to tell you what's going on in their life, and that's okay. But just letting them know that you're there and that you actually care for them, I think can really change someone's mindset and attitude.
Yeah. Something real quick before we end, something that I used to love to do when I was in an office is if I noticed that um, more than two people, and this was a larger office, but if more than two people showed up kind of not in the best mood, in the morning, I went to the doctor and I said, it would be great today? Starbucks.
Yes.
And I would talk him into getting coffee for everybody on the team. And that immediately, just having something to feel appreciated, and then, and that, people are actively working to make your day better, so that's another little tip you can put in your back pocket of just, if that's something that as an office manager, or you just are the wanting to make everybody's day a little bit nicer one day. Let's say Mondays are really hard for everybody on your team.
Yeah,
Then just stopping and getting some sausage biscuits for everybody in the morning, or talking the doctor into getting a coffee for everybody. It can really go a long way.
absolutely. Kindness goes a long way. It really
Yeah.
does. And
Yeah.
we all
Well,
want to be kind.
yes, just be kind. So thank you, Susie. This was
Thanks for
really
having me.
awesome. And I think we should do another one. At some point. If anyone has any questions or would love some more verbiage from Susie with specific situations, I don't want to open this up as like a um, Dear Anne or whatever that article used to be for Susie, but you can email podcast@ess.me. I will get it connected with her to answer any questions that you have, or maybe help you if you have a specifically difficult situation.
Yeah,
And then any other questions or topics that you have around conflict resolution, I would love to have Susie back to talk more. So,
yeah, I'm always willing. And so,
yeah,
yeah, and if you guys have any like situations that you're like, I just don't know what to do, email, what'd you say, podcast?
podcast@ess.me.
And I will definitely try and help you out. So
Yes, Susie's amazing. So, thank you so much.
thanks so much. Bye bye.